Welcome back. In this step, let's get our hands dirty with Amazon API Gateway. I've already launched up Amazon API Gateway. You should know how to do that. Go to services, type in API Gateway, and you would land up in here. And what does it help you to do? It helps you to create, maintain, and secure APIs at any scale. As we talked earlier, the backend systems can be EC2, Lambda, or any web service. The first choice that you need to make is an API type. I'll leave the HTTP API for a little while. You'd use WebSocket API if you're going for WebSockets. You'd use REST API if you'd want complete API management features. And you'd use REST API private if you'd want your REST API to be accessible only within a private network. Now, what is the difference between HTTP API and REST API? REST API reads, develop a REST API where you gain complete control over the request and response. And HTTP API reads, build low latency and cost effective REST APIs with a few built-in supports. Because both of these options, HTTP API and REST API, can be used to build your REST APIs. So what is the difference? The difference is that HTTP API is actually a new version of the REST API. So it's actually a simpler and more cost-effective option for REST API. But the HTTP API does not provide all the features that a REST API provides as of today. I would expect the HTTP API to develop over a period of time. For now, let's start with using the REST API. So let's build our API gateway using the REST API. So I'll go ahead and say build, and I'll say OK in here. By default, it would bring up an example API of a pet store. Let's not worry about it for now. Let's choose to create a new API. So I would want to create a new REST API, and I'll call this my hello world. I'll say API gateway. You can add a description if you want to. There are three options when it comes to endpoints: regional, edge optimized, and private. Private is when you'd want to have a private network. You need to go for edge optimized if you'd want to allow invocations from something called edge locations. We already talked about regions and availability zones. AWS has regions around the world. However, there are a lot of places where regions are not available, and even there you'd want to serve users quickly. What AWS does is it offers something called edge locations around the world. And there is an AWS service called CloudFront, which will help you to distribute content to all the edge locations around the world so that you can decrease the latency for your users. So there are 20 regions, but there are about 200 plus edge locations. We'll talk about CloudFront and edge locations in detail when we get there. For now, let's just choose regional, which means the endpoints would be offered from our specific region. And let's create an API. Now, once you come in here, you can see a lot of details, right? So you can see the whatever APIs you would want to manage through your API gateway and what are the different methods that you would want to have for each of these API. Do you want to have get method, put method, delete method, or which post methods you would want to support? You can have multiple stages like a dev environment, a QA environment, a stage environment. So all that kind of stuff. You can have authorizers. So API gateway can perform authorization as well. So you can create authorizers in here. You can customize the gateway responses in the gateway responses. So if there is a 404, how should you respond? You can create the request response models. So what should be the structure of your request response in models? You can configure the permissions and all that stuff that you would want to give to your API gateway in resource policy. You can generate the documentation for your API and look at it in documentation. And there are a few settings that you can do in the settings. Let's not worry about all that right now. Let's get our hands dirty and let's create a new API. So I'll say create method. So I'll say create method, and I would want to create a get method. So I would want to support a get method from this API, and I'll say OK, and this would generate the setup for us. And now we can configure what is the backend for that get method. What I would want to do is I would want to invoke a Lambda function. We have already created a Lambda function earlier. So let's use that. You can see that there are other things you can do in here, like make a HTTP call or mock or a few other options. Let's not worry about them right now. Over here, let's select which Lambda function. We already created a Lambda function in the last steps. So I'll use that. My Node.js Lambda is the function I would make use of. You can see that we are using the default timeout. The default timeout is 29 seconds. So that's the default timeout. If you want to configure a custom timeout, you can go ahead and configure that in here. On an API gateway, you can configure a very, very high timeout. But let's use the default timeout. That's fine for us. And let's go ahead and say save. The notification which comes up says we are giving permission to execute the Lambda function to API gateway. And that's cool. So let's go ahead and say OK. And within a little while, you'll be able to see the entire thing come up. Now, we have an entire flow configured in here. Now, in the screen, which comes up, you can go ahead and test your Lambda function. Let's go ahead and say test it. I'll go ahead and say test. You can see that the response which the Lambda returned is returned back to us as is. So the Lambda returns my first Lambda function from dev. And that's exactly what is being returned back. And you can also see the logs in here. So you can see all the stuff behind the request in here. In this step, we quickly created an API gateway to front your Lambda function. So your API gateway would now allow external users to come in and access your Lambda function. Next step, let's look at a few more details about your API gateway. I'll see you in the next step.